Bright and early. Welcome to the morning brief right here on Channels Television. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, the world. Welcome to the morning brief. I'm Anne Nwawadu.
We're just waiting.
Hello and welcome to Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikile, so there's an inside joke. And it's good to see you.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here after so long.
I can tell you that.
You guys miss me.
Because
I want to hear that you missed me.
So you took your time to sleep.
I'll feel good. Huh?
No, we miss you.
Did you miss me?
Of course. What kind of person would I be if I said no? Right? Sometimes you have to be politically correct.
This is being politically correct.
I think you guys
course.
are trying to make me happy.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
You know, with just Jeffrey and I, there's a flavor to it. But having watched the Olympics and seeing how our women made us proud, like it's a no-brainer. You need a woman in your life.
Woman power.
Wherever you are, you need a woman, either in your office or I don't know how to say it. We both need each other, so I don't get in trouble this morning. But absolutely, it's good to have you, Anne.
Thank you very much. So this also goes out to all the women making us proud in Nigeria, across the world, especially in sports. I mean, we're all doing very well. So congratulations to every woman. On behalf of every woman right now, let me just say, well done, woman power.
I don't know. She just came today. She just wants to take over the show.
I just want to.
Yeah.
But what is the problem?
You know why?
And you just came, though.
Let me make people happy first now. Because
just came
people,
to
this past week, I've been hearing people saying, oh, I'm mentally exhausted, I'm emotionally exhausted. And a lot of people are just talking about how exhausted they are, especially with everything happening around.
Yeah.
So in some insanity, you have to find sanity.
Absolutely.
Do you understand? Whatever it makes you happy, please ensure that you find it. I don't know how, but just find it.
Yeah, that's why you're here, to give us that feminine touch. You know, I think
sanity, right?
Give us. I remember someone said, Kayode Jeffrey, this show is too manly. This show is too manly.
It's too masculine.
It's too masculine. No, manly, I think that's the word the person used. So we're happy to, I almost used a bad word on TV. It came out, I almost came out of my mouth, but let me rephrase.
We're happy to host.
So we've given you that touch that you require to have a great breakfast show. Anne is here. Okay, Bukola is on leave. So they'll be swapping places. What are we even doing this morning?
Well, first, welcome,
I don't know.
Anne. But guys, I saw something quite interesting yesterday, and that's the trend of, and this it's not a new thing, really, the trend of extreme weather conditions.
Yeah, where is it happening this time?
Across board, really. If it's not heat somewhere else, even in Paris, you know, they had to install some cooling equipment right under the board, such that when people walk across it, it cools their body. So it's heat in some places, it's flooding in some areas. We saw what happened with the road in northern Nigeria yesterday.
Yeah,
people were saying,
agree.
What's going on? I thought this is the north. We shouldn't have these issues. But I think it's important for people to know that, well, the rule of the game now is for you to expect anything, really. And as much as possible, let us try our best to do right by the environment. Because, I mean, you just wonder, where else do we have to go? There is no life on Mars. Let me break it to everybody. There is no life on Mars, at least at this point. I know that they said they found some sort of water under the surface. But right now, we have nowhere else but Earth. This is home. So we have to treat it well as much as we can.
Which also brings us to the idea of climate change and the policies and changes that are to be made as individuals, as groups, and as government also. I mean, a lot of people are talking about Canada and how it's raining almost every day in Canada. You'd expect that it should be real summer right now with the bright sun and all of it. But it just brings us to the idea and the talk about climate change and the policies and things that we should do as individuals, as I said earlier, to make sure we make a difference.
You know, the reason I'm almost smiling, Anne is here, so when she mentioned summer and climate change, I said, okay, this Ajala is still around.
What's this?
She knows where I'm going to.
I haven't gone yet.
Anne
Don't worry.
A traveler. That she's even here, we're lucky. so we're grateful you're here. Welcome to the program.
You see me now, you don't see
No, you know
me.
what I'm saying? Anne will be somewhere, let's not go into our, let's not go there. By the way, we're just excited here. It's a Tuesday morning.
This is Jeff exposing me on national television.
But it's okay. So you're envoy around the world. The Olympics is going to. Will you get to Los Angeles next? Have you been to the Olympics before?
Yeah. No.
Okay. I know you'll be to.
Be coming down. Be coming down. Maybe the next one.
Yeah, I know the next.
You guys deserve your own show at this rate.
We should have a reality show, Jeff and Anne.
Okay, guys, so let's get to the business of the day. What are we talking about today? Is a big one on the program today. And that's exactly where we'll be starting off from. The nationalities within the Nigerian state have argued that our geographical expression appears to be an attempt to force disparate clusters into a homogenic template without recourse to the people's consent. And time and again, our Grundnum, which is our constitution, has been cited as very defective document that needs to be rewritten to reflect the people's will and interest. So today, we visit the call for a new constitution getting the perspective of a legal mind and custodians of the future, the young people.
So it'll be good to see actually how young Nigerians will approach this conversation around constitution.
Oh, well, cycling for a cause also coming up on the program. We meet an intellectual who is above and beyond to use her behavioral analytical skill to chart a cause for persons with autism, driving that campaign through her hashtag Ride for Autism initiative to help lend her voice. Dr. Ezefiako Nwokolo joins us on the show later.
Come on, guys. It's just amazing to see how Nigerians are driven, and in spite of different odds, they keep going for it. So if you're a Nigerian today, kudos to you. And this is by no means saying other nationalities don't matter, but Nigerians are absolutely amazing people. So here's what we'll do. You can be a part of the show this morning. Hashtag CTV Morning Brief on X, Facebook, Instagram, across board. Just hashtag us. I will, of course, see your comments. Or you can just head over to WhatsApp right now. That is the golden number. I always say, never mind, it's in black. That is how you can reach us. Messages and videos, whatever is happening around you, send it in. Let us help you give it a voice.
Okay, well, there's some gold around that black number too, so that shows you it's a number you should not forget. Save it somewhere and sending all your messages, and we'll be reading it right here on the show.
I saw the bicycle and I remembered Nigeria's cyclist in the Olympics, Essay.
How well did you do that?
Well, we know from the medals table, Jeffrey. I think that's enough
Jeffrey
to
wants
say.
to go there.
I haven't been to the Olympics like that, so I would like to go and see these things myself. So.
Let's make
Los
the date.
Angeles is in 2028.
I know, so we have 4 years to plan ahead.
Yep.
You know,
Maybe we'll go together. That's true.
Jeffrey, the athletes have 4 years to plan.
Forget that.
You, the traveler, you can plan a year to that.
A year. You can plan just a day too. You know.
See why I say she's a traveler. Alrighty. Just bought the ticket and go. All right, we'll bring you your top stories after this, and then we'll get to the big conversation for days. The Constitution, and following up on that lady who is riding for a cause. Join us again. Up on the brief this morning is a preliminary assessment of the damage caused by an explosion on part of the River State Secretariat of the Action People's Party by the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Tunji Diso. The CP says his men are actively investigating the explosion when he led a delegation of officers to assess the damage at that facility, calling for vigilance. The national and state chairman of the party maintained their resolve to continue their activities despite what they describe as an attempt to intimidate the party.
We deployed our teams to come here and take charge of the area. The bomb squad has been sent here, and I'm waiting for their report any minute from now. I will not want to go deep into that because I have not gotten my full reports. Definitely, everybody should be concerned about their safety and their security. I don't want to go deep down into some things that I don't want to mention now, but most importantly, everybody have to take their security very important. Like I quickly sent in our officers in here yesterday, because anywhere there's an explosion, there's likely to be a second one. So we move people away from that. And that is what my team succeeded in doing.
We are calling upon Mr. President, the heads of security agencies, to go after these criminal elements whose interest is to instill fear, instill violence in River State. We as a party, we are not deterred. We are sure that they are getting the signal of Rivers people joining our party in preparation for the forthcoming local government election.
These uncivilized acts of people who think that they are reservoirs of violence, who think that they are reservoirs of knowledge, who think that River State must control whatever they want or whatever they interact. we have come to change the narrative. Whether anybody likes it or not, one thing that is constant in life is change.
And still on security, 6 travelers, including the driver of a commercial car traveling from Takum local government area in Wukari to Taraba, have been shot dead by gunmen. The incident occurred at Sai community, a border community on Benue state of a stretching into Taraba state. A development the state governor, Agbo Kefas, has condemned in its entirety. Meanwhile, the chairman of Takum local government area, Mr. John Ali, explains how hoodlums emerged from the bush and opened fire on the moving vehicle. According to him, the National Union of Road Transport Workers have been warned against plying the route early in the morning due to the volatile nature of that particular road. Let's also tell you that staying in that particular region, suspected hoodlums have set ablaze the Redeemed Christian Church of God located along the Federal College of Education Road in Kontagora, Niger State. It is the second time in 10 years that the church has been targeted, with previous incidents occurring a decade ago when unidentified attackers burned down the building and warned against it being reconstructed. The chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria in that state, Most Reverend Bulus Yohana, condemned the latest attack, describing it as barbaric and uncalled for. Let's move on now to other stories where the federal government is making it mandatory for all government organizations and agencies to procure military hardware from the military industrial complex at the Defense Industries Corporation in Kaduna State. Addressing a news conference in Abuja ahead of the 60th anniversary of the celebration of the corporation, the permanent secretary of the ministry, Mr. Ibrahim Kana, says it is only when the desired hardware is unavailable at the corporation that government organizations will be allowed to make procurement from abroad. The permanent secretary explains that the amended act for the corporation signed into law by the president mandates government agencies to look inward for military hardware procurement in order to contribute to Nigeria's national development and national security. Let's now head to the villa where President Bola Tinubu has sworn in Mrs. Didi Wilson-Jack as the new head of service of the Federation in the State House, Abuja. The event took place in the council chambers just before the Federal Executive Council meeting chaired by President Bola Tinubu. Speaking after the ceremony, Mrs. Wilson-Jack said she will build on the existing reforms in the civil service, while her predecessor, Dr. Folashade Yemiyesan, enjoined civil servants to give their best to the country. Let's now talk some politics, where the Edo State government has accused Mr. Philip Shaibu of impersonating the deputy governor of the state and advised him to stop presenting himself as such. This is coming after Mr. Shaibu's broadcast when he directed staff of his office yet to resume work since his reinstatement to do so or face the consequence. After his impeachment, Mr. Shaibu challenged the matter in court, and Justice James Omotosho declared that the impeachment by the State Assembly was illegal and ordered the IGP to restore his security details and state government to pay his old salaries and allowances. However, the Edo State House of Assembly appealed the judgment and filed for a stay of execution pending the determination of the appeal. In a swift response to the matter, the State Commissioner for Communication and Orientation, Chris Nahikare, said the issue of his purported reinstatement is still active in court, with the next hearing for the 2 separate motions filed by the state government and the Edo State House of Assembly challenging the reinstatement by Justice Omotosho scheduled for September 2024. According to him, the status quo remains that Mr. Mobayo Marvelous Godwins is the deputy governor of Edo State, and any correspondence carried out by any other person, including Mr. Shaibu, constitutes impersonation, and anyone dealing with him does so at their own risk. Now, the political drama engulfing Rivers State has taken a very interesting twist as the State High Court has sacked the APC caretaker chairman, Mr. Tony Okocha. Justice Sika Apreko instead nullified the sack of Mr. Emeka Beke as the APC chairman and further reinstated him, then issued an order restraining Mr. Okocha from parading himself as the APC chairman. A separate press briefing, both men reacted to the development where Mr. Okocha insists he's still in charge of the party. In business, Nigeria's crude oil production has risen to 1.3 million barrels per day in July from 1.27 million barrels per day recorded in June. And that's according to the OPEC's latest monthly oil market report. The 30,000 barrels per day increase in output comes as OPEC cuts 2024 oil demand growth forecast to 2.11 million barrels per day. Nigeria retains its leading position on the chart for Africa's top oil producers within OPEC, followed by Libya and Algeria. However, Nigeria's oil rig count fell to 14 in the month of July from 15 recorded in June. On the international scene, Ukraine's top commander says its forces control 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory as they push their biggest cross-border incursion into the war. Commander Alexander Syrskyi says Ukraine continued to conduct an offensive operation in the Kursk region 7 days after it began. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia had brought war to others. Now it was coming back to Russia. However, Russian President Vladimir Putin says the offensive is a major provocation and ordered Russian forces to kick the enemy out of their territory. Let's now talk sports. The governor of Abia State, Alex Otia, has awarded the players and management of Abia Warriors Football Club of Umuahia for reaching the finals of the 2023-2024 President Federation Cup, where they lost to El Kanemi 2-0. The governor announced a cash donation of 30 million naira and a brand new coaster bus for the team.
So you came from the area and you placed second in the FA Cup competition. That's a big feat, that's a huge feat, and I'm happy and I congratulate you. Clearly I can say without any fear of contradiction that the next time around you will carry the FA Cup. Finally, on behalf of the good people of Abia State, the government of Abia State, you will get 30 million naira.
Well, those are the stories we've been tracking for you. In the last, 24 hours, it will form part of our conversation for the rest of the day. But hey, let's get to the conversations you've been having online, especially our social media of choice, which is X. Anne joins me now to bring you up to speed. Anne, what's been going on? Welcome.
Okay. Well, it was part of your story that started this conversation that you all have been sending. So thank you very much for sending them. The first is the reinstated Edo Deputy Governor Shaibu as he resumes office. A lot of people have been talking about that. And this is coming from Hode, his Apex Hode. He says that beautiful governors should stop treating their deputies as errand boys. The deputies are also elected executives with immunity and powers backed by the law.
So that was the Edo State, reinstated Edo State Deputy Governor. You know, this is just even confusing in all of this state. So, do you
know the people I pity? The ones who have been instructed to actually resume or face the consequences. So they are torn between the devil and the deep blue sea. What do they do?
It's a difficult situation to deal with in Nigeria right now. Two emirs contending for the throne, two deputy governors in Edo State contending for the seat of all these are legalese, and then two houses of assembly in Rivers State. So wonderful times to live in Nigeria. Ruben Knight says it doesn't matter where he sits, but for his safety, if the court reinstated him as deputy governor, so be it. We have to accept it and move on. That's politics. For the record, the state has filed for a stay of execution and has appealed this particular judgment. So let's just watch and see how this plays out. And you have the next one.
Friedrich Omodiale says that beautiful, these are the kind of disciplined, law-abiding politicians we want, boldly following the law and fearful of no one.
Wow. So there's a lot to come through as far as that particular issue is concerned. We're going to be watching that space and see how it plays out eventually. Elections are just This is what, August?
August, just
September.
in November.
September, we're going to, they will go for an election and decide who leads them from there. Okay, Nigeria will rise if churches preach hard work over prosperity. This is credited to former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo when he talked about it's important when you talk about prosperity, you don't just benchmark it on prayers, you benchmark it on hard work and all of that. So Nigerians are reacting. This coming from A.B. Lawson, your handle is Adewin Bill, says, Pastor, I completely disagree with you, sir. Nigeria will be great if you politicians stop your corrupt practices and stop nepotism. You rulers are not showing that hard work pays, I guess that's what we wanted to say. As Nigeria of today, hard work hardly takes anyone anywhere because laziness is handsomely rewarded.
All right, Sheena Ron says that do the churches in Europe preach hard work over prosperity? Churches need not preach this for Nigeria to rise. You have been and seen the best of both sides to know this.
All right, Aziz Adam says, you may be right, but aside from preaching hard work, how about politicians work hard to end corruption too?
Wow. Omar Kogi says that they have preached both. Nigeria still did not rise. Should we add more yeast, sir? Oh, that's dark humor.
That's sarcasm. Okay, Okwi Tycoon says, it's not far from the truth, but the government should also do the needful as well. If not, the church will keep preaching about prosperity to give her congregation hope. Then I guess that's what you wanted to say.
Ajuba 101 says that I agree with you to an extent, Your Excellency, but where are the job opportunities for our dear citizens to work hard on? That's the problem. The unemployment plaguing our country is one that must be dealt with decisively. Our youths are hardworking, just create jobs.
So some people are actually saying by inference, look, it's the failure of political leaders like you
that is causing this problem.
Not talking about him, that political leaders generally, that is causing people to resort to the things they resort to and even deceived by some people who are mischievous in administering
and I actually like the one from Ajuba where he talked about hard work and how hardworking Nigerians are. I mean, Nigerians are talented. If you go through social media, you begin to enjoy so many people doing wonderful things that they just need that, you know, that ginger.
So there's another story that's been online for about 2 days or so. A lady, after she and her husband and a child arrived from abroad, I forgot the country.
From Europe,
From Europe. She tore the passport at the airport, and she's been summoned by the immigration officer. So let's take a listen to what happened.
If you want to sleep there, you sleep there. Come and go. This is Nigeria. I hear you.
Voila. Bros, just take it easy.
Wow. So this is so
you're the traveler.
I'm the traveler, so I understand what this means. Again, there's been controversial talks around this. So the husband has come out to say something. The wife has also been out to say something.
Apparently
but in all, they haven't
issues.
said anything. Because of all they said, you can't even bring out one single family issue, which also goes back to the fact that they are actually content creators. So we do not know if this is about creating content.
I don't know, but I actually read a statement where she was saying that she's worked hard with her husband.
That the family.
The family of the husband is not allowing her per se to enjoy the benefit of her hard work.
But should this happen?
But at the end of the day, let's put this in context. So your passport is not necessarily your passport.
Yes.
It's a property of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Even the land you own is called Certificate of Occupancy,
which
not
means
Certificate of Ownership. So the Nigerian state owns literally, including your child. That's why they can take away your child from you if you can't raise your child very well.
True.
So this is the premise. So immigration is swooping in and saying, look, you have questions to answer for tearing the property of the federal government, I guess. But people have also said, immigration is rushing to do this. We have other issues around immigration and even customs, and they've not come out to talk. Why are they quick? But let's hear what you say. Valencia Cute says, Confirm. Nigerians should know that Nigerian passport is a national symbol, just like emerald green national flag, which must be respected.
African Unifier says that someone they suppose arrest immediately. Well, that's pidgin. Tearing a national passport is like matching your feet on the national flag in front of the president. She's supposed to be jailed 6 months and sweep the community 6 months, really.
All right, Madam Gago says destroying a national property in their premises it's a big offense that should not be taken with levity. I hope she put her emotions in check going forward if she's not jailed.
We would like to really hear from them, both of them actually, the real problem. But Royal King says that she committed a heavy crime by destroying a government property. She thinks the man can't get the passport back. He will get it back and still get a visa to travel back. You can settle your problems with him without the show of shame at the airport. Get reasons are not enough. Well,
all right, Bakari Akim at day 9 says, I watched the video. I can only imagine what she must have been through in her marriage. Her husband can always secure a new passport, so why go through that route? It's unfortunate she allowed her anger to overwhelm her reasoning. At the end, she has kids with this man.
Which was actually a very touching moment, because you could see in that video the facial expression of those kids. It was fear, it was confusion, a lot of things happening. So in all we do not involve kids in your personal problems. I mean, let them see, how do they now get that love and get to experience it or show it when they grow up if you're not even showing it at home? So please, make responsible decisions next time.
Just like the immigration has just zoomed in on this one, please, immigration, customs, everybody, police, zoom in on every other thing.
Every other thing.
It's not this one. Nigerians are saying, the way Nigerians say, now we see gra-gra. It's not by this gra-gra.
It looks like a selective gra-gra.
So go. I know there is one guy, one investigative journalist did something on customs.
Yeah.
We didn't hear anything from customs. Allegedly, that the guy was into a couple of things. Till today, we've not heard anything. So that gra-gra that you have used on this woman, and Bobrisky, let that gra-gra be on everything. That is when Nigerians will understand that the law is for everyone, and not some people are not above the law. But hey, the conversation continues. After this break, we'll bring you our very first conversation that has to do with the Constitution. Do we need a new Constitution? That's a big question. Young people will speak, and a legal luminary will also bring his thoughts on this one. Join us again.
We put some proposals to Mr. President, and we urged him to send a President's executive bill to the National Assembly, a bill that will call for two essential measures. One, the convening of a National Constituent Assembly to be mandated to produce a new draft constitution. And we suggested that such National Constituent Assembly should consist of individuals elected by the people on non-party basis. Say, for example, 3 individuals per state, per each of the 36 states, and 1 from the Federal Capital Territory. And they should be mandated to produce a new draft constitution. And we also suggested that in the bill, the National Assembly should be asked to legislate for a national referendum, because as our laws stand at the moment, we have no provision for a national referendum. And we concluded by saying that the draft constitution to emerge from the Constituent Assembly should be subjected to the national referendum in order to give the peoples of Nigeria a chance to determine their new constitution.
Well, this is not the first time a call has been made for a new constitution, or at least a new draft constitution for Nigeria. But the question is, will this be the last time? We've been here before, as I said, and let's bring in two young Nigerians who've walked this journey of getting a new constitution, tweaking it in such a way that it favors young Nigerians as well. We're joined on the program by Cynthia Bamalu, who's the Director of Programs, Yaga Africa, as well as Rotimi Olawale, the Executive Director, Youth Hub Africa. Both of them join us from our Abuja studios. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief. Well, guys, I'd like us to walk down memory lane, and I'll begin with Cynthia, because you've been here before. You've been a part of a call for an amendment to Nigeria's constitution, a review of sorts. So I'd like us to start from your experience then. It was a major one in 2012. A lot of young Nigerians wanted to participate in this. There were meetings online. There was a lot of groups coming together. But we didn't quite have what we wanted. So it's important to learn from the past and ensure that whatever it is we're doing right now, we're doing it with that knowledge of things that didn't work then. So Cynthia, I'd like you to walk us through your experience then, and then perhaps some of the lessons to pick from then that will move forward. Cynthia.
Thank you and good morning again. I think there's something we need to understand that first, Nigeria has a rigid constitution, which means that the amendment of the constitution in itself is not an easy process. It's almost like the American Constitution. I mean, the American Constitution, there's been over 10,000 proposals to amend the Constitution, and barely 1% of those amendments had gone through since the Constitution has been in existence. And same also in Nigeria. Why am I giving this context? Because the 2012 era, for instance, we actually had a YACOR. We had this Youth Alliance on Constitutional Electoral Reform, and we engaged at this geopolitical zone, because at the time, there were zonal hearings in the 6 geopolitical zones, but before then, there were sub-meetings that happened at state levels to help put together proposals that were a lot more youth-friendly. A lot of conversations around things like the right to education was very paramount then, the rights for young people to contest office, pushing for removal or reduction of age to run for office, citizenship and residency rights conversations were ongoing, and issues around local government autonomy and representation, affirmative action for women and for young people and persons with disabilities. I mean, these were some of the conversations that a lot of young people rallied around at the time. And I know we had presentations at the zonal level in the 6 geopolitical zones when the National Assembly committees deployed for the zonal hearings. And then finally, there was the combination of all the reports from the zones, which formed the final report, and then the voting at the National Assembly. Remember that to amend the Nigerian Constitution, you need two-third approval from the Senate and the House of Representatives, two-third majority votes, and then you also need two-third of the state houses of assembly to vote in support of each amendment before the assent of the president. And so, while there were a lot of conversation, sadly not all the proposals, majority of the proposals did not make it through, because currently we still have debates around issues of citizenship, residency or indigenship rights. Conversation around local government autonomy is still ongoing. Issues around independent candidacy is still ongoing. Issues around rights, certain rights in Chapter 2 becoming parts of Chapter 4 or justiciable, or making certain rights in Chapter 2 justiciable, those issues are still strive. And then now we have issues around security, which is still a major issue in this conversation. So while not all provisions went through, there's something we've learned from 2012, is that when it comes to amendments of the Constitution, most times it's almost seen as an elite conversation. And how does it happen? You have National Assembly set up committees to amend the constitution. And I do worry that in almost every assembly that we've seen, there's been an attempt to amend the constitution, but the conversation honestly is there a political will to truly galvanize citizens and get input from the people to truly have a citizens informed amendment to the constitution? And that is where there is a problem, because from 2012 a lot of the proposals that were made did not make it to the final voting, because it has to go through the through the several stages of legislative amendments, and at the point of third reading, a lot of those proposals from the zonal level did not make it in. It seemed like political interest once again was superseded that of national interest. And so from that lesson from 2012 to the current proposal, to the current amendment process, if there's something we must learn is for this amendment process to truly reflect the wishes of the people, that we need a National Assembly to understand that the proposals from the people from different parts of the country must make the final document that gets to the point and to the third reading for voting, and that voting is done in the interest of the people, not just individual interest of National Assembly members.
Absolutely, Cynthia. And let me come to Rotimi Olawale now. The point of this conversation is to also set the agenda, in the sense that young people are the ones that will live with this constitution for a longer period. For a lot of people, the older generation, they wouldn't live with this constitution if there will be a new constitution for as long as young Nigerians. Some of the young Nigerians will live with this constitution for 60, 70 plus years. So it's important to have the input of young Nigerians who make a huge chunk, or who make up a huge chunk of the nation's population. But haven't seen all of the groundwork you guys did then. I'd like to just take a peek into your experience. They always ask, what do women want? And I'd like to turn this now to young people in Nigeria. What have you found out to be what young Nigerians want when it comes to the Constitution?
I think that the first and foremost is to say that what we currently have is not working absolutely for anyone, and that's what you've seen in the last couple of weeks when young Nigerians have come on the street to protest and say Nigeria as it is today is not working for us, we're not getting jobs, we're not being fed, and we have a lot of challenges within the polity and within the system. And so if you ask me what the young people want, I think following on and piggyback on what Cynthia has mentioned, in 2012 there are quite a number of proposals on the table. For me specifically, I was very concerned about the section on chapter 2 which talks about education, and which people will tell you is not justiciable. And we have a huge educational problem in Nigeria where we have over 14 million out of school children, and this is a big issue that needs to be dealt with. So how do we ensure we guarantee the rights of children and young people to education in Nigeria? That's a big issue that we need to tackle going forward. And then when you look at also some of the provisions also you see in other climes where you have a high percentage of women in parliament, in Nigeria it's very low. I think in Senate it's about 3%. And also you see in other climes also specific seats allocated to young people, to women, to persons with disabilities. These are some of the proposals that have been put forward in the constitutional review process that we took part in 2012. And I must tell you that a lot of organizing goes into getting young people to even sit at the table and consider what do we want to do. And the world has changed 2012 to 2024. It's been 12 years. In 2012 it was early days of social media organizing. We did a Twitter conversation, but now there are many more young people on social media, and we need to have a larger conversation on how do we make Nigeria work for the entire populace. I know that the patriots who met with the president proposed also issues around referendum, but even a referendum has to be subjected to a constitutional review process, and that's something that has not also been accepted in previous constitutional amendment process in Nigeria, and that process may also become difficult. I think for me, one of the things that perhaps might be easy is about devoluting more powers to the regions. Nigeria already is informally grouped into the 6 geopolitical zones. Anything you want to do in Nigeria, everybody talks about the 6 geopolitical zones. Even when government want to consult with people, they go around the 6 geopolitical zones. And I think that that's some assemblage that is already accepted, even if it's not currently in our constitution? How do we devolve more powers into the zones? How do we empower the zones more? But there are also questions that people are going to ask you. One of it is about resource control. How do we allow those to control their resources? The second thing is also about IGR. As it is today, there are only about 5, 6, 7 states which generate at least 40% of their expenses from IGR. Many of them rely heavily on allocation from the federation account. And so when you say you are devolving more powers into the zone, are you asking them to generate their own resources? This is going to be one of the thorny issues as you consider constitutional review in this climb.
All right, Mrs. Mbamalu, I like the fact that Mr. Lawale had touched something around women in government, which is my next question to you, Ms. Mbamalu. Let's talk about women's participation in government. If you look at Rwanda, for example, more than 60% of more than 60% of people in government are women. And I was opportune to ask the Rwandan president about how things worked out. If you look at where they're coming from after the genocide to where they are currently, it's a very big difference. And it was just about working more with women. So what would you like to see in this new constitution about women participation, about things affecting women, policies that can drive, maybe not gender equality this time, but something to at least put women on the pedestal where they can actually do something good and make a difference in government and in the economy?
Well, I would like to begin with something. No, you said something and said maybe not equality. And our constitution actually talks about 3 principles: freedom, justice, and equality. And if there's something that has been a major challenge in even our configuration as a country, is that sense of injustice and that sense of inequality. And it cuts across geopolitical zones, across ethnic and religious divides, but more importantly, across gender lines. And that is because as it is currently, we have a constitution that, yes, promotes that principle of equality and talks about non-discrimination. But if you think about the composition of government, it's not a reflection of a society where we have men and women. And so if you ask me what would be the proposals, in the 9th Assembly, there were 5 important gender bills that did not make it through. And I do believe that these bills need to be reintroduced in the 10th Assembly. I know one of them has gone through second reading, the reserved seats bill. But maybe I'll begin with the very simple one: citizenship. This is a country where in the constitution, as a Nigerian, women have lesser rights as citizens than men. And what do I mean by this? Currently in the constitution, a Nigerian man who gets married to a foreign woman can confer citizenship to his wife. But a Nigerian woman who gets married to a foreign man cannot confer citizenship to her husband. What it means is for several Nigerians who are married to even as close to Ghana, their husbands are from Ghana, Togo, Benin Republic, just very, very, I'm not going far to the west, just within this country, they can't confer citizenship rights to their husbands. So what it means is already that particular section undermines the quality of citizenship of a woman and subjects or creates a sense of second-class citizenship within the constitution. And that was a simple proposal that I felt did not even need debate. If constitution talks about equality and that we're all created equally and that we have fundamental rights which every citizen must enjoy, then there shouldn't be a provision that limits a right that a citizen who is a man enjoys and limits it to only men, and women can't enjoy that right. So that simple provision requires an amendment where, as Nigerians, you are not restricted on who you should get married or who you should fall in love with. That you can confer citizenship as long as you're Nigerian. You don't have to be a man to do that. The issues around representation is key. We cannot have a government where women are not part of decision making. And so there are proposals currently, one, to create additional seats or to ensure affirmative action in the composition of the National Assembly and state assemblies. Currently, 13 states in Nigeria have no woman in their state assemblies, meaning we have state assemblies that are all men in a country where women are almost half the population. Then we talked about appointments. That is also the proposals. Our national gender policy talks about at least 30%, 35% affirmative action for appointive positions. Currently, we have a government where at appointments at the national and state level, we are struggling to even have 10% women. At the most, what we've had is about 18% at the national level. And so that in itself does not even promote the principles of equality, justice, and freedom expounded in the Constitution. And then talk about issues of indigenship and citizenship rights. We live in a country where some women are stateless in a country that they are citizens. How do I mean? You have situations where a woman she's from one state and marries into another state. Now, where the opportunities, especially employment opportunities, scholarship opportunities for education, educational purposes, appointment positions, and you know that most of those are done based on your state of origin. You have situations where women have been denied those opportunities either because their state of origin denied them and said, oh, you've been married into another state, so go to your husband's state. Then they go to their husband's state. The husband says, oh, you belong to, go back to your father's state. So it's like you're creating a sense of statelessness in a country where we are citizens. And the proposal was, if women marry, men are not subjected to this disadvantage. And so when a woman marries into another state or is married to someone from another state, she should be given the right to choose one of the states as her state and not be denied opportunities just because she married into another state, especially when our constitution promotes national integration and national unity. So, and then I think the last proposal was around executive leadership of political parties, because we have political parties that the only position they give women is a national women leadership position. And we know that to win elections in Nigeria, political parties are the platform to contest and win elections. And the proposal is to amend it to provide that at least when it comes to executive position in political parties, 35% is reserved for women. They contest and they get those seats so that women are part of the decision-making processes within political parties. So if you ask me, there are opportunities in the Constitution to create spaces for women. And you mentioned Rwanda, Kenya. We have countries in Africa that have adopted that, and there are different ways to legislate quotas, and Nigeria has an opportunity to do that, because we can no longer continue to talk about equality and a country that belongs to all Nigerians if women are not treated as if they are equal Nigerians. And honestly, issues around development and all of the challenges we are dealing with are still persisting because decision and policy making is done from one lens. Until we have men and women make decisions of developmental issues in Nigeria, we would not see results.
All right,
you can't be flying, a bird can't be flying with one wing and expect to get to its destination. And I think that is an important conversation for this amendment process.
Absolutely, and we're all for the women, because you even add the part of change of name issues when it comes to marriage and certificate. There are myriads of issues when it comes to advocating for women. Let's take it to Mr. Olawale. And let's take it way back to what brought this conversation. Chief Anyoko and the Patriot are actually calling for a few things. They are saying they are trying to propose to the president, so send a bill to the National Assembly to do two things. So convene a constituent assembly made up of maybe ethnic nationality or people that will be elected from states, and then also within that, let there be a legislation around referendum, whatever is being drafted. So this Constituent Assembly will come up with a draft constitution that will now be subjected to a referendum. Because the argument from the older generation is the fact that the last time we had a real affirmative plebiscite was in 1963, the way the Midwest was created from the West. That every other arrangement from our amalgamation to the 1999 Constitution, we were all not on the table. So my question is, do we need an entirely new constitution, or we should go through this piecemeal of Section 8 and 9 to amend it as we've always done? Because they are advocating, throw this document away, give us a new document that is quite representative, just like we had with the affirmative plebiscite in 1963 to create the Midwest region.
I think the process to create an entire new constitution is going to be fraught with a lot of challenges and problems. I read the proposal by the group of Patriots, and let me go to the second proposal. The second proposal talks about a bill to the National Assembly to create a referendum process. That bill in itself, I don't think it's going to pass through, because that in itself requires a constitutional amendment process. So first, you have to first amend the constitution, the current constitution, to allow for a referendum process before you then come back to discuss about creating a new constitution in its entirety. I listened to elder statesman Emeka Nyako talk about electing three persons and non-partisan from each of the states. That is also going to be very problematic. One, are you going to ask current members of the National Assembly not to contest? Are you going to ask political parties not to organize around this? And how do you elect? Of course, you're going to ask INEC as perhaps the only body that can conduct such an election. And so there are many challenges around it. I think for me, the important thing is to look at what we currently have and see ways and means that we can improve our current constitution. And we have done so over the years. If you look at, for instance, how INEC has been created, the Electoral Act, we've seen various amendments to the Electoral Act. It might not have been perfect as what we have today, but we've seen very specific improvement from what we have when the Electoral Act was initially passed to the current version that we use now. And so organizing a constituent assembly, we've seen all kinds of assemblies that have been organized in Nigeria. What happens to the report? We organize them, they're expensive, people come to Abuja, they sit, they debate over days and days and days. And sometimes when you see the proposals that are coming out of this, one of the biggest things that come out of constitutional amendment process is creation of more states. Every region in Nigeria wants to create more states. And you see, I think in the last process, I think there were over 40 proposals to create additional states. That's just going to increase more overheads. And that's what happens when you bring politicians together to discuss about creating new constitution. Everybody is looking for political opportunities. How do we create an opportunity for me to have my clan as a state, so that it increases my chance to become a governor, increase my chance to become a parliamentarian? Nobody's fighting for what truly benefits the Nigerian people. In my own sense, we have a constitution. It's not perfect. We continue to build on what we have. We need to have the voices of citizens represent more in our constitutional amendment process. So as a person, I support any process that creates opportunities for Nigerians to vote in a referendum, and we need to organize ourselves in that way. We also need to have more powers to our current state or to the region as a whole. We have issues around security. Security being organized at the central in Abuja is not enough. That has been facing a lot of problems. We need to think around how we organize security better at the state and local level to deliver more goods for the people. Our local government has been in shambles for years. I'm happy that conversations around local government autonomy is picking up speed at the moment. We've seen some traction. We're not yet there, but there are other levers we can move to ensure that we separate the local government financial control from the hands of state governors, and that they can respond to challenges at the local level, and that this can be driven. Finally, also the issues around independent candidature. Running an election through political parties is very expensive. People will tell you, if you want to run in any of the big political parties, you spend 60-70% of your budget running for primaries. And people will tell you, my friends who run for office will tell you, nobody supports you when you're running for primaries. Everybody wants to support you after you've won the primaries, and then you spend a lot of money organizing a primary. But if you want to run a local election, if you believe you're popular in your state, in your zone, and you can mobilize by yourself as an independent candidate, I think these are some of the things that we need to infuse into our current constitution to allow people, young people, women, to test their popularity, to mobilize, to organize within their community, and be able to represent their people at various levels of government.
I guess there are a lot of people watching right now with different mindsets. For some, they're like, we've been here before. Don't just raise our hopes. We say constitution review. We've seen what happened in the previous assemblies and how we went to the states and fell through. Some are like, this is even too complex for me. Okay, so I'd allow the people in government do this. Whatever they come out with, we're fine with it. And the goal of this is to sort of unify all of those minds and ensure that we all put in work to bring out a constitution that works, at least for our nation, Nigeria. So I'd like both of you to quickly speak on this point. From your previous experience, who are the people or what institutions have you seen to be the most powerful to either achieving success or otherwise when it comes to constitutional amendment or review? This is not to draw a target on their back, but just to know those institutions or people that at least we need to, would I say, lobby or relate with or engage such that we achieve success. I'll begin with Cynthia, then I'll come to you. Who are those powerful people or institutions we need to pay attention to?
Well, I have an unpopular opinion, and it's honestly like, Kayode, our constitution as it is, if we had political leaders that want to get the job done, if we had good leadership, this constitution will be implemented and every Nigerian will benefit from the resources. But the problem is we have leaders who get into office and want to use their powers for their own interest. Local government autonomy, Supreme Court did not even need to give us a judgment for us to know that local governments are autonomous by the constitution, that elections need to happen at that local level. But governors go in and start behaving like dictators and want everybody to be bowing to them, and they complain yet of the federal interference, while they are also not allowing local governments to be independent. And so if you ask me, honestly, I do believe that the power is with the people. Why do I say so? National Assembly has the powers to amend the constitution, but they are representing different constituencies. They are representing we, the people of Nigeria. And so if we think about having a constitution that works, getting sections that are meant to favor the interest of the people. And I think Nigerians, we need to hold our National Assembly members, the state, the Senate and the House, our lawmakers in those two chambers to push proposals that favors the people. This amendment process, for instance, we don't just want a piecemeal conversation where you just have a public hearing that is not well publicized. We want to have conversations with minimal budget costs. Because whenever I talk about this, National Assembly thinking of big monies they want to spend, and then they spend so much money and do nothing. What we are looking for, you can actually organize town hall meetings in your constituencies and meet your constituents and ask what are the proposals, and whatever comes from those town hall meetings, you bring it to the national, and those are the things that forms the conversation before you go through the other processes that leads to a public hearing. And town hall meetings are easy to organize. Almost every community in Nigeria has a town hall, and so they don't need a big hotel or a big facility or to spend big monies to travel to do that. And so I do believe that if you ask me where lies the power, honestly, I don't have as much faith in the president, because I'm not those ones. I'm not going to be begging the president to do things. He's elected. He ought to be good to do things because he's elected, or the National Assembly. All I'm saying is we need the lawmakers to go back to their constituencies, engage the people, get the proposals from that level, come back to the national level, and then we have the legislative process that leads to the amendments of the proposal. And this engagement should also happen at the state level, because to amend the constitution, you need the state assemblies to also vote in support. Unfortunately, state governors do not even allow state assemblies to be independent enough to vote for proposals that will favor the nation, which is why local government autonomy keeps failing when it gets to the state level. And I'm hoping that this time around, Nigerians also make demands on their governors to let the system work for the people. And so when it comes to the amendments, I believe that the power lies with Nigerian people, but we need to make those demands on the government, on our representatives at the National Assembly and then at the state level, because these bills would end up coming back to the state level. But honestly, this can be achieved with minimal cost, and I'm emphasizing on cost because Kayode, the budget that is spent on constitutional amendment every assembly it's worrying, and it's really sad because so much monies are spent doing nothing, and that in itself is a major problem we have with leadership in Nigeria.
Maybe you can respond to the same question that Kayode asked before I throw in one question, maybe in 30 seconds. Let's Olawale, your response to Kayode's question.
I think for me that what we have currently in Nigeria is what I would call elite capture. You have many political groups, political parties, associations who have captured the political process in Nigeria. And when it comes to having the loudest voices, or when it comes to representation, or when it comes to presenting their proposals, these are the loudest voices that you hear within the polity. And an instance is the current protest that was organized in the first week of August. You can see that there's a discommunication between elected representatives and people who are yearning and saying Nigeria is not working for us. And if if you have people in the National Assembly who have constituencies, they should have been hearing from their constituencies and going to the National Assembly to say, this is what we're hearing from our constituency. People are very angry, people are hungry, but we're not hearing that. And so there's an elite capture of our political process. You have socio-cultural groups who are very powerful. You have political parties who are very powerful. You have the elite group of governors, the Governors Forum, who are very powerful. And we have a former governor who is now the president of Nigeria, who is part of that. We will be what they call the 1999 group of elite governors who is now in power. And so you have that group of governors who are very powerful. And so this elite capture is what we've seen in Nigeria. And that's why I support the process of a referendum that transfers a lot of power to ordinary citizens to be able to have a say in the constitutional amendment process, not the ones that go only to the state houses of assembly where the governors has a lot of say, and it goes to the National Assembly where they do not consult as much as possible their constituency. But you have a referendum process that puts power in the hands of citizens for them to decide and say, this is what we support, and we can feel the pulse of ordinary citizens within the constitution process.
Let me come back to you, Cynthia. I did ask Olawale this question, but let me bring it back to you about whether or not we need a new constitution. One of the things Chief Emeka Anyoko, the statesman, raised was the fact that we need to be sensitive to our pluralistic composition as a country. He cited Czechoslovakia, Slovenia, I think as well as Sudan, which didn't appeal to this composition, and they disintegrated over 100 years period or more. And then he cited India and Canada, who respected this heterogeneous situation, and now they are still strong as a country. So the question I asked Olawale, is it a new constitution or this amendment we're talking about?
Well, I think there are several conversations here. There's issues around the economy. And I think our challenge, honestly, most times we think the only way to solve our problems is to change the constitution. If we get a new constitution and still have the same mindset of leadership, and we don't have a constitutional culture, we will still have the same challenges that we're having. And why do I say that? For me, it's not necessarily about having a new constitution. You can't stop a tree from growing by plucking its fruit. There's a fundamental question of inequality and injustices that a lot of people agree from different sections of the society. And so that is a different conversation that is not necessarily a constitutional conversation. It's a conversation around leadership and how leadership has failed over a long period of time. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is issues around our federal system needs to be truly addressed this time around. And because it's not necessarily going the path of the Czechoslovakia method, it's about how do we design a federal system that works for Nigeria. India's federal system works for India. The same way Germany or Canada, it works for them. But Nigeria, we have our own unique peculiarities and we have our own levels of diversities. And so when we talk about a federal system, I'm hoping that this amendment process will truly devolve power in such a way that we can begin to see a sense of federalism that works for Nigeria. And that is about how powers are properly devolved within the federal, state, and even the local government autonomy. Because at that lower level, we are not experiencing governance. Because there's no sense of development happening at that level. If we begin to address those simple things as how do we ensure we have a federal system that works for Nigeria, and then issues around dealing with the sense of inequality that persists in our system, if we address that, I do believe that a lot of Nigerians will begin to feel connected to this idea of Nigeria. And honestly, I don't have an issue with the proposals from the Patriot, but I also think in all of this conversation, the youth voices are still missing. And if you ask me, Nigerians' median age is approximately 18 years, meaning that the people of Nigeria now, majority are young people. Any conversation that does not have people born at least in the late 80s, early 90s, and 2000s as part of those conversations is not a conversation for the Nigerian people, because it's excluding the majority of the Nigerians. And so we also need to be like what Rotimi said, this elite capture of spaces. I think we also need to break that down to get youth voices back into the conversation.
And that is why here at Channels Television will ensure that all the voices are heard, particularly young Nigerians in this case. This is why we're having this conversation, essentially. We would like to thank you so much, Cynthia Bamalu, Director of Programs, Yaga Africa, as well as Rotimi Olawale, Executive Director, Youth Hub Africa. It looks like you guys are back to the trenches now with this Constitution review. So see you in the trenches, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll get the perspective of, well, a senior legal person. This one you do not want to miss. Stay with us.
To have or not to have a new constitution is the crux of the conversation. That's why we brought in a legal mind, a senior legal mind, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Yemi Kande Johnson, joins us via Zoom. Let say thank you so much, and good to see you, sir, on the program.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
I want you to maybe start from some of the things and the remarks by the group called The Patriot, led by Chief Emeka Anyoko. Literally, if we're fair, he's trying to say, look, whatever it is we're doing, all of the things we're dealing with, whether it's economy or security and all of this, these are just symptoms of a bigger problem for him, the rewriting or redrafting of the Constitution. Is that what you see from where you sit?
I think that this is a very distinguished group and that their thoughts on the organization of our society are very important. I think that there's some critical points that they made. Some of the points, some of the conclusions they reached may be debatable, but fundamentally to your question, I think that the organization of power and the distribution of resources within any political society is a matter that can be arranged by a constitution. So to the extent that that is persistently problematic for us, looking at the constitution may be a helpful way to try and resolve some of these issues.
And so if you look at some of the issues raised, they raised the issue of insecurity, I think the issue of the economy. How can a new constitution help us address it, that this present one we're dealing or we're using as a working grown norm and document is not helping us to achieve that purpose?
I think that we often make a mistake when we talk about constitution as if we're lawyers. And we talk about a written document and enacted law. This is why I remember listening partly to Chief Anyoko. He said the 1999 constitution was illegitimate. I found that pronouncement to be problematic because a constitution is a political and social arrangement. It's an agreement between the people in an organized political society as to how they will regulate relationships between themselves and relationships between themselves and those who govern them. So it's every political protest, as you saw protests recently in Nigeria, is the beginning of a negotiation. Every stakeholder in any political society has peculiar interests, and the price we pay for political stability and ipso facto for the progress in the economy, etc., is in including as many people as possible. The greater diversity you can encompass in a pluralistic society, the more likely you are to have the stability. So the Constitution, therefore, is a device, and maybe you could say that those who control power pay the price in the Constitution of limiting their own powers and organizing and making clear to all those who participate in that political society that there are rules, there are arrangements, and these arrangements can be seen to give a fair opportunity to as wide a group of people as possible. One of your earlier speakers I just listened to spoke about the youth. The truth is that 60% of Nigeria's population are under 30, but then the majority of political power is in the hands of a more aged elite. Same thing, a majority of Nigerians are women, but then you will find that in political participation, the role of women is limited. What that means is that there is no access for a great majority of Nigerian populace to be heard, to feel included in the power distribution in Nigeria. And that is a source of instability. If you have political instability, you're going to have a dangerous contest for power, which is going to result in violence, often in these extended protests, in discontent, and lack of a joint or collaborative contribution to the future progress of the country. So it's about inclusion. You have to give people the idea that the devices for regulating power and distributing power and resources is one in which they feel they have a fair chance.
Mr. Johnson, when you compare the past, maybe let's talk about the outcomes of past constitutional conferences. When you compare it to what is happening now and the call for a new constitution, do you think that a difference can actually be made when you talk about the outcome, if it were positive or negative, looking at what is going on right now? What do you think will be different this time?
I'm not so sure that just by declaring a constituent assembly, you're going to make things different. I think that what will make things different is in recognizing the task at hand. If you look at the constitutional history of Nigeria, every country needs a constitution, however you call it. The United Kingdom has a constitution which is not written, but it's a constitution nonetheless. By a series of conventions and arrangements and recognized legal procedures, they organize their society in a way that allows participation. And the history of the UK, which is a country from which we owe a lot of our own legal origins, shows that the constitutional arrangements have evolved over time as a result of a succession of agitations. It's still within memorable history that there was rigging of elections. It's still within legal history that there were people, they had rotten boroughs where for 100 years the same family controlled the elections and the representation in that constituency. And then they had a series of political events, including the Peterloo massacres, where people wanted the reduction of the price of bread, for example. But I use that as an example because that political society has evolved by making constitutional adjustments from the absolutism of the king to the complete regulation and the subordination of the king to political authority. So the point is that you have to recognize that what you're trying to do is to define a model which arises from the experience, from the values and the aspiration of the society you want to regulate. Another one of your speakers earlier on spoke about what happens in Czechoslovakia or in the United States or in Germany or in Canada or in India is works for them. What we have to do in Nigeria, I think that it's a mistake to simply say we want to revert to the 1960 Constitution or 1963 Constitution, models which were examined and negotiated at a particular time. Even constitutional arrangements must evolve. So if you look at the Nigerian constitutional history, 1951, so many people regard the 1951 Constitution as the most representative because a wide and detailed consultation across the nation was engendered. Chief Bola Ige criticized 1960 Constitution, which many people consider to be so beautiful, as being defective in that it did not arise from a wide and democratic consultation of the people. You have to ask the people, what are your fears? What are the dangers you want to protect against? What will make you feel included in this society? What are you afraid of? In 1958, there was the famous Willing Commission was asked before Nigeria's 1960 Constitution to examine the problem of minorities. The problem of minorities was regarded as a potential explosive device in the constitutional arrangements of Nigeria. Because if minorities feel excluded, they're going to constitute a force for division within the nation. And in Nigeria, everybody in some way is a minority. If you don't recognize the rights of minorities and you don't give a nod or some sort of deference to them, you're going to have a time bomb which is going to explode from time to time. So it's very important to recognize and regulate that. And the recommendation of the Willing Commission was a legal one. It said that if you give people basic rights and you acknowledge basic rights and you have an independent and impartial judiciary, then people will feel confident that they can be defended, their rights, their prospects, their hopes, the lives of their children, their safety, their security can be regulated by a system which is rational, which is accessible, and which is effective. And this is the challenge. So you have to ask people what they want. You can't create. So another one of your speakers, a lot of very interesting points they made, spoke about elite capture. This is a great danger. When great men speak down from the Olympian heights and tell you what type of constitution they need or what type of constitution the nation needs, there is a great problem and a danger that I see activated because they do not and cannot represent the plurality of Nigerian society. They have to ask them, and they have to be humble enough to accept that their opinions and thoughts may not be the ones that prevail, but that every political agitation is the beginning of a negotiation. You must find out what people want, and then you must reach a deal. A constitution is the result of that consultative process. If you don't have wide participation, activation of people about their own rights, about their own needs, then there's going to be explosion and there are going to be time bombs along the path of your constitutional progress.
And this is not to raise people's hopes unnecessarily, because we've been here before, and this is not to even say the government has said, yes, we'll go ahead with this, even though, well, when the people ask for some things, it's expected a government which is acting on behalf of government would do those things. But you talked about young people, which is a major part of this conversation. We're very big on young people, not just because we're young people, but young people are clearly the ones that will live with this constitution for longer. So in terms of getting representation, which you also talked about, the proposal from the group is a constituent assembly, not a demographic assembly. Maybe you have representation across ages. So how do we ensure that if this goes through as it ought to, or as it is proposed rather, that we have the representation the right way? What kind of model would you recommend, if at all you don't mind doing that?
Well, first of all, if you create a constituent assembly, the question that you face is how do you populate it? If you look at what they did in Kenya, every member of the existing National Assembly was a member of the Constituent Assembly because they are a vested interest and they are a political stakeholder group which is powerful and which is highly influential. You cannot cut out the existing powers. So when you say that the Constitution is illegitimate, this is a mistake, because in constitutional law, there's nothing that succeeds like success. The test of a constitutional arrangement is effectiveness. And if people are governing today under an existing legal document, that document cannot be legitimate because it is achieving real results in the constitutional field and constitutional law. So you have to acknowledge those. Then you have to say to yourself, what level and mechanisms for participation do I need? In 1951, they had town halls, they had chiefs calling their councils, they had local government arrangements, they had these were not necessarily, political parties were not as involved at that stage, but these were not necessarily party political events. The challenge, the key test, is how do you consult people and how do you bring the result of that consultation into one organized event? Now, the Constituent Assembly, how do you bring those people? Well, many people have distrust of the electoral practices in Nigeria. So if you say you want to elect people to a Constituent Assembly, people are going to say it's going to be rigged. And that may well be the case. So there are many models that many countries have used. You can say we're going to put part of the National Assembly that exists. We're going to ask stake interest holder groups to nominate traditional rulers, women, youth, a variety of people. It's something that requires some thought. I noticed that Chief Anyoku talked about creating a Constituent Assembly and asking 7 lawyers from geopolitical zones to advise. It's really more than that. It is the plebiscite which he refers to at the end of the process is in fact something that must be investigated before the beginning of the process. We need to find a way, even in determining how we constitute a Constituent Assembly, we have to create a body whose authority will be so implicitly accepted by and adhered to voluntarily by the wide majority that it will have power to make change. Because there is an existing legal order. And what you're doing by trying to upturn the Constitution and create a new one is to revoke the existing legal order. You cannot do that except by bloodshed or violence without consultation. You have to find a device by which you include those who hold power today. You have to make it clear to them that the continuity of societal progress, their political stability, and on the future of the country depend on their expanding the base of power. They have to recognize that it's in their own interest to do so. This requires intricate negotiation, and it requires a formulaic approach to devices which will do that. So there's a lot of work to be done. The fact that a great group like this makes this proposal and they bring this to the presence of the president means that a great political event has been heralded. Now, to do the work which will make it effective, we now have to think very carefully about how we achieve that. I want to hear from youth what they think. I can't possibly imagine what the youth think. I can't possibly put myself in the position of women and decide what they think is valuable and what is important. Is it their land rights? Is it right to succession? Is it political power? Is it economic power? These are all stakeholder groups whose voices must be heard. The challenge is to find devices to bring those voices into this process and to put them in a Constituent Assembly.
All right, let's also explore one other, what we call the major fault line, ethnicity and tribalism, religion, because those are alibis that politicians took during election cycle, and everybody seemed to run to those places as alibi, especially ethnic nationality. I want you to maybe speak to how we can, just like you spoke about women and the young people. Some are proposing that the best way is to speak to or bring to the table the ethnic nationalities who are quote unquote owners of the country within their own different blocks.
You know, you can't ignore fault lines. You can't ignore perspectives which may not be your own. I was in a conversation, or I was listening to a conversation a couple of days ago about people talking about areas of the country which feel they're marginalized and that they're victims of tribal recrimination. Now, I do not belong to that particular group. So I must recognize that they have a right to be heard, because unless I want to remove them from my political society, I must accept that their grievance is a legitimate cause for discussion, a legitimate occasion for discussion, and that every person's right and fear must be negotiated. We cannot ignore tribe in Nigeria, because the history of our constitution and political progress is that a lot of political activity has been organized around ethnic groups, around religious groups. I mean, even if you go to a social function in Lagos, you're going to find people sitting in groups that are similar to those ones that we discussed. But they're in the same place. We can sit down in the same place and we can recognize that we have differences, but you have to ask people, again, it's about interrogation and investigation. Is it possible to say that an Igbo man from Abia State has needs and ideals that are so violently different from those of a Hausa Fulani from Kano or a Yoruba from Oshobo that they cannot live in the same community? I don't think that is so, because there are basic needs that people have. They have need for life. They have need for shelter. They have need for food. They have need to feel safe for the future of their children. Those are fundamental needs. What makes people resort to ethnicity and religion as a defense for those rights is the fact that those rights are not available to them by the virtue of their citizenship in a political society. So this is the problem. It's a lack of exclusion. It's a feeling of alienation that causes people to go back to the bunker of their origins. If I can't be protected in the federation, then I'm going to go back to my state. You have to feel safe. So you extract the things that people care for, the things that people are afraid about. You have to explore their experiences and give a nod to the fact that you may not understand, having not walked in their own shoes. What are you afraid of, I keep saying? What would make you feel safe within this federation? What is the danger? What is the historic grievance that you have which has not been expressed? Can I hear it? Oh, I see. Because you cannot shut people down. The freedom of speech, freedom of expression, these are part of the price we pay for stability in our political society. If you shut people up, they will go quiet, they will go underground, and they will continue to threaten the stability of your political order. So it's very important. We cannot ignore those things. And the more people have the responsibility to speak about them in public, don't speak about your grievances as a Yoruba, an Igbo, as a Hausa Fulani only amongst your people. Have the confidence to speak about what you feel in a public and open space. Because some people don't know, and some people haven't walked in your shoes. But you have a right to be heard. You have a right for your grievance to be included in the political arrangements. The sharing of power and the sharing of resources is how we protect people's fears and anxieties and how we guarantee the stability of our society. This is the foundation of a constitution. Again, as a lawyer, I should divorce myself from the presumption many lawyers have that a constitution is about sections and about paper. A constitution is a social and a political arrangement between peoples living in a political territory, and the purpose of it is to regulate their behavior amongst themselves, distribute power in a way that is most effective to achieve a widest commitment to the ideals of that nation.
Mr. Johnston, we've talked a lot about inclusion and getting everybody to talk about this and what they want and all of that. But again, Nigeria has a population of over 200 million people. If we're saying that everyone has to have a voice, it means children should be involved, religious leaders should be involved, we as citizens should be involved, every sector of Nigeria, every human, women, and everyone. So I know you talked about creating a platform where everyone can be heard. So if you were to give a legal advice on how this can work so that everyone's voice is heard, what would be the immediate step that should be taken right now to make sure that everyone is included, every voice is heard? At least in the Constitution, it creates a platform where everyone is involved.
Yeah, this is just spitballing, as they say, but I would create a minister for constitutional reform. I would give him a team to frame a series of questions about, in the context of our experience, our values, our fears, and anxieties. And I would organize national discussions in the press, in political societies, in political parties, about fundamental questions that Nigerians want to know about. What type of land ownership will make me feel I belong to Nigeria? What type of rights? Children, how do we protect children? Do we protect them against exploitation, against trafficking, against marriage? There's a wide variety of issues which can be framed into a number of discussion points. I would activate discussion amongst those points. If the government is talking about people's concerns, they're not going to go to the streets to express them. They're going to express them in the fora that have been created to express them. Lack of opportunity for expression is what spills protest onto the streets. Even people we don't like have views and have rights as long as they remain within our society. So I would activate a series of discussions, and I would create a pipeline for those discussions to become proposals for the structuring of our constitutional and political arrangements. And then I would engage the existing political powers, including the National Assembly. You see, if there's leadership in the government and there's desire to promote these ideas, they can drive it. The president and governors are powerful bully pulpits. If they talk about something, people are going to respond. And they have to be willing to hear things that they don't like. It requires some maturity. This is why people who create constitutions are very big people. The people who created the American Constitution in Philadelphia, in their convention, I don't think they were up to 100 people. But then they came there with the views and the hopes of a largely homogenous society. But even a heterogeneous society has to have people who can speak for it. And we have to be willing, again, to hear things that we don't like. One thing that Nigerians have insisted upon over the years in constitutional discussions, because of our own history of the Civil War, is that the unity of Nigeria is non-negotiable. I accept that the unity of Nigeria must be preserved, but I don't accept that the unity cannot be negotiated, because the terms upon which a nation is united is what makes the union perfect. So let's not confuse the fact that we will not dissolve the nation with the fact that we can discuss how we make the union more perfect. That, again, is a familiar expression, making a more perfect union, because you have to realize that people's needs, fears, anxieties change, and that we have to negotiate the means by which we bring all these units together.
All right, so one of the questions that people have raised in the past, which I would like you to speak to with the Constitution, is the fact that some have said, how do we even replace the Constitution? Some have said, Section 4 gives us a room or gives the National Assembly some room to effect this process. I want you to speak to the legal backing as to how to replace a Constitution.
Okay, well, that's very interesting because creating a Constitutional Assembly is creating a body which, by legal definition, subverts the existing legal order, because it is going to, if you want to replace the Constitution. But again, though the device may be difficult, an aphorism which always comes to my mind when I talk about constitutional issues is one that is valuable here. In constitutional law, nothing succeeds like success. If you can achieve it, and it's a political exercise. If you can achieve a political result which sticks, it is constitutional. That is very clear. Any constitutional scholar will tell you that. So we have an existing legal order. We have a National Assembly operating under a specific constitution. They can amend the constitution. In Kenya, the Supreme Court held that you cannot amend the constitution by replacing it. No Nigerian court has held that. So one potential device is that if a new constitution is agreed, the National Assembly would pass a law to adopt that constitution and effectively dissolve itself. It could be an interim National Assembly pending when the new constitution is brought into effect. But the fact is that if you change the constitution and you recognize that, somebody must enact the new constitution. And, we dwell on the fact that 1999, 1979 constitutions were enacted by a military government, but that was the existing sovereign power. The 1960 constitution was enacted by the House, by the British Parliament. That itself was not a Nigerian people. That was an existing sovereign authority over this territory. So somebody has to exercise sovereign power to enact a constitution. And if we defer to a constituent assembly, that will be effective. If National Assembly says the Constituent Assembly has been constituted on the laws that we created, they have come with a document and we adhere to that document, we now pass a law creating a new constitution, and that when that constitution comes into effect within 6 months, this National Assembly shall stand dissolved and shall be replaced by a new National Assembly. That would be effective. If it has political authority, in constitutional law, it will have legal and constitutional authority. So you can tinker with that, but fundamentally you must create a series of legal processes by which the existing sovereign yields power to a new sovereign power by some sort of legal event. And the nature of legal events requires not a high level of ingenuity, but it requires above all political commitment and support.
All right. We must thank you so much, Leonard Silk, for bringing this perspective on this particular issue. It's an ongoing conversation. So minds like yours will always be invited to bring clarity to all of us as much as possible. Thank you so much, Mr. Yemi Kande Johnson, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Well, we will take a quick break. When we come back, we will not be talking constitution. We'll be talking about a cause, a very important cause for the welfare of people that need it. Join us again.
Welcome back. And of course, this is still the morning brief right here on Channels Television. So our next segment is about something very sensitive, something very important, and it is about autism. There are lots of misconceptions about autism, and it has even evolved over the years in diagnosing it, in treating it, in managing it. So today on the show, we have Ms. Ezia Fakako Nwokolo, founder of the NGO Shades of Life Foundation, and she is planning a bicycle riding for this cause to create awareness around autism. She's riding from Lagos to Accra for autism. Well, that is a very big, I don't know how. And you'll be using a bicycle.
Yes, 2 wheels. It
two
has
wheels,
2 tires,
two tires,
and some spokes in it.
No engine, no battery.
No engine, no battery.
None at all.
You are the fuel, you're the battery.
The fuel, my legs are the engine, whatever, just keep moving.
Oh, well, but that's a powerful name first, Ezia Fakako, which means a lot. Now, anyone would want to know, how did this even start? What inspired it? Was it a story, personal experience, a story? I'm sure there's a story behind this.
Yes. So I have a 23-year-old who's on the spectrum. She's brilliant and has gone through life. But prior to knowing that she was on the spectrum, when she was just approaching her 3rd birthday, I realized that there were some gaps and differences between her and the older ones and the younger ones in terms of her behavior, use of language generally. And so, not having a clue, went to the hospital. I was talking to colleagues at the time, I was still working, and they were like, Ezia, well, we're praying, you just face the hospital. And my husband and I had no clue, okay? And so we got the big word, autism. So you can imagine me thinking, okay, in a climb, when you've waited to have a child, and then you have this bundle of joy that now has other issues, it becomes mind-boggling. So anyway, fast forward, We're getting intervention. A couple of other parents and myself will bring help in, will travel, but it just wasn't cutting it. We had people in the country doing what they could as well. But after a while, I just thought, you know what? I'm not really feeling it. I think there's more that can be done. So I retired from my 9-to-5 10 years ago and just went into the field of just learning, equipping myself, equipping others so that we can provide service. And so out of that was born Shades of Life, the Limited. And when we started working with individuals, we would see that there were a couple of people who would start and then drop off. And upon further inquiry, it would be lack of resources, and there are even people that wouldn't start. And so again, we form the foundation. So the core of a foundation is doing exactly what we do, the Limited, assessments, diagnosis, training for parents, teachers, communities, but FOC.
Amazing. It's just brilliant. And I'd like to maybe get a bit personal with this question. I mean, you said having waited for some time, you have a bundle of joy and this happens and you're like, come on, why me? Do you ever feel, and I'd like you to encourage people out there, that's the point of this conversation as well. Have you ever felt life is unfair to me? And how did you maybe find your way out of that? Because a lot of people thinking, why me? I mean, it's enough to be in Nigeria, right? And then I have these things piled on me. So how did that ever happen to you? Did you ever have to deal with that? And how did you come out of it?
Yeah, I recall in the early years, I mean, I was like, after the diagnosis was given, for 1 whole year, I didn't pray. I didn't talk to God, so I was fighting with him, basically, you know, if it was possible to do that. But I just didn't communicate because I was in that place of, okay, what's all of this? How do we move forward? What am I supposed to do with this whole thing? And I recall a time when we traveled, because she also had feeding issues at the time. I was trying to feed the younger one and feed her simultaneously, and this child was just not eating. I didn't realize that I actually let out a scream at that point because all the frustration or something, I actually screamed. How did I realize? My brother-in-law was around, and when he came, he just didn't say anything. When he came back from work, he just turned to me and said, "Do you feel better?" And I just, you know, I was like, "Yes, I do." So I find parents, we go through that phase where, you know, but what I've always said, maybe everybody isn't like me. My faith plays a great role. But beyond praying, I always say you've got to meet your challenges head on. If you don't accept what's there, no matter what it is that you're going through, you have to come to a place of acceptance. But then turn that around into something that you empower yourself with to deal with whatever is going on. Does it make sense?
Yes, it does.
No self-pity, no pity party. Of course, today I had a moment of, oh gosh, this child, you know. Last week, I had a moment of where I was almost going to cry because something happened. And I'm like, oh, damn you, autism, you know. But, hey, I'm human. But I don't stay down. I don't.
For those who find it difficult not to be able to rise to your level,
okay,
who stayed you stayed for 1 year without praying.
Yeah.
Some may have been in perpetual anger and disgust. Where do you start from to talk to those people?
So that's why part of what we do, because, you know, in the foundation is just provide that counseling. We look at such people and we know that they are not there yet. Some may even appear to be there, but not quite, you know, in terms of, so like you say, they've not moved on. We take on, first of all, our focus is on the child. So we want to relieve the added burden by taking on the responsibility of catering to the child and then walking them, meeting them where they are. If today all they see is one small tooth, we work with the tooth. If tomorrow you put one foot forward, we work with you. We just meet them where they are, and counseling is so crucial. So I have a team of psychologists and behavior analysts and everything, and we actually sit down and have one-on-one. Some get it after a while, some don't. Some it still takes them months. I have a recent diagnosis, if there's any word like that, an adult, and I haven't had a conversation with the mom because she's still trying to understand what she's just been told. Do you understand? So we just keep meeting them at their level. You can't force them.
Which brings me to my next question. I know that at the University of Kent, you did a research, or your thesis was about screening for autism and intellectual disabilities amongst the Nigerian adolescent population. So we'd want to ask, what are the early signs of autism? You said you found out at 3 years old when she was 3. A lot of people don't even find out until 10, 11, 12, and it has already created a great challenge for them over the years. So they didn't get that early, which would affect their education and affect every other thing around them, especially dealing with society also. So what are the early signs of autism for those listening who have probably seen some of the signs in their children and how to deal with it? Are there also therapies that can help deal with this problem?
Very good question. So when I was doing my study, people wondered why I focused on adolescents, but it's to address this same question. So in the early years, you have signs such as what we call red flags, basically. They may not be attending. They may not maintain the simplest on eye contact. One of the most interesting ones is a response to name. So I'm calling Eziafa, and Eziafa isn't turning. I'm in a world of my own, right? The only way to get my attention would be to walk up to me, either touch me or offer me something. So you've paired my name with a verb, something I like. And so when you have some of this, or you see them on their own, so we're all together and I'm in my little corner doing my own thing. So these are all signs. Those that don't speak, the non-vocals, that could also be a sign. But you see, sometimes people confuse that with just simple lack of speech. But all these are symptoms. Now, when you have those that are vocal, that can speak and integrate and have some social skills, so to say, it becomes more challenging. So those are the ones that they would send off to school. They would integrate semi-nicely. But in the midst of others, they're still not optimal. They're not functioning optimally. And so those are more likely to be missed. But what we look out for in adolescents no longer is the response to name or eye contact. We're now looking at their social skills, because they would have some impairment in social skills and social integration. Even when you're diagnosing adults, we no longer look for the eye contact and things. It's more about the social elements, okay? So when I did that study, it was, like I said, to address this. And a lot of some of the things that I found was exactly what we're looking for. People that were in school settings that the environment had labeled as being stubborn, being difficult, being restless, all sorts of words that you hear out there. I've been telling you this thing from Monday through Friday, day in, day out, and you're not responding. You don't get it. So these are some of the signs that you would see in older children and adults. Not because they are being deliberate, but they just don't understand what we're saying.
And this conversation is really important. First, we don't have data, as we ought to, about autism in Nigeria, at least up to date kind of data. 2014 report puts it at 2.3% for prevalence, and also clearly we can do a lot more. But let me come back to you, because you're doing a lot more. You're not just doing research about this, you're not just being an amazing parent. You now want to cycle from Lagos to Accra, Ghana.
Say you don't want to cycle.
I mean, you have enough on your plate. So what you do was like, you know what, let me order more, I can do more. So talk to us about what you're about to do, the preparation that has gone into it. This is your Olympics, by the way. And I would trust you to win that gold medal for us.
We will. We will.
So talk to us about what you're about to do and the idea behind it.
Okay, so like 3 years ago, I belong to a cycling club as well. I do all sorts. I just thought, I can use my bicycle to preach the gospel of autism, okay? So I started what I called Ride for Autism. And we did the first one in Lagos, post-COVID, maybe 20, 50 cyclists. And then we had the second edition, a lot more people. And then the one we had this year, the third edition, I co-opted another club, cycling club. And we had a turnout of about 100. I'm like, yeah. And in doing this, I would get either parents or people on the spectrum to come and have the conversation and just, tell the masses. And in doing this, I've found that a lot of people that thought they knew what autism was have gone, oh, it's not what I thought. Because autism is a hidden disability. It's not like having a physical one where once they see you, they know that this person has an issue.
And there's a spectrum as well. So
exactly.
It can be at different points.
Different.
Yeah.
There's a popular voiceover, the first African voiceover fellow in Nigeria, Remy, who is our friend, who's autistic, but nobody knows. Okay, he doesn't hide his, so I can, I've had him speak at one of the events, because after the ride, we sit down and have the debrief. And this time, I thought, okay, I have a friend in Ghana who's been doing play for autism. Last year, I was going to write down, but things didn't quite go as planned. So this year, we started on time. And I thought, okay, I think I'm crazy enough to do this. And I have a couple of other crazy fellows, so we'll be 11 of us, who are like, oh, let's do this. So we're going to start off in Maryland, ride all the way to Accra, probably have 2 stops. The first, they were aiming to do over 200 kilometers. And the first day we'll do about 200.
So where will 200 kilometers take you to?
So 200 kilometers from Maryland will get us to Grand Popo in Benin. Wow. So we'll be at the border of Togo and Ghana. And then the second day we'll enter Ghana, but we're not going to be in Accra. We'll be in Sago, Kopwe, or whatever they call that city. And then that's about 150. And then we'll do another 100 and something to get us into Accra.
3 days.
Yeah, but on the return, we're going to do it in 2 days.
Ooh.
So the first day on the return, we'll be doing about 250 kilometers.
That's a stretch.
Yes. So that'll be from Accra to the Grand Popo.
Right.
And then from Grand Popo into
Lagos. So will funds be raised? What are you trying to generate from all this, besides the awareness?
Yeah. So the plan is to raise about 20 million.
20 million what, naira?
Naira, yes. Okay. We can have more if we have generous...
You can have dollars too.
Yeah, dollars, generous donors. We're not picky. Any currency will do, we'll convert it. And what we aim to do with the fund is assess, diagnose more families, more children. Because part of what we did this year with the Ride for Autism is to offer free assessments, free screening. And in doing so, I realized that we can't just stop at screening. It doesn't make sense. So you have the paper that says you're likely to be autistic or whatever. Then what happens, right? So we went all the way to diagnosis, and to complete the chain from screening to diagnosis and training a parent of an autistic individual was about 1 million naira for one person. And we did about 18 families. So I'm thinking, okay, if we can do 10 again, and then the other one would be to train teachers, because we've also done some training for Lagos State teachers, the counselors at secondary school level, over 500 of them. Do you understand? So this would also help us train teachers.
So when are you starting?
The ride?
Yeah, the ride.
August 20th.
Can we join?
Please.
We donate hand. On behalf of the team, we
All
donate
right,
hand.
but since we're
likes to travel,
I like to travel, but not on a bicycle now.
Okay, we'll put you in the car. You'll
Thank you.
You'll be handing us water.
I'll do that one. But anyway, but just before you go, because this is a very challenging issue, what would you be telling that audience watching you right now who has an autistic child or a teacher who's finding it very difficult or frustrated about autism or neurodiversity?
Please don't give up hope. We're here to help you. Just reach out to us and we can take the conversation further.
All right. Thank you very much. She is a bicycle rider for a cause for autism, and she's riding from Lagos to Accra, and we definitely have our support. Akwaba.
Don't taste the jollof.
Don't start
Whatever
that.
You do, don't taste the jollof.
Okay, I'll go with our jollof.
Thank you. Go with our jollof and share it out. But thank you very much for doing this. It's a great cause, and we wish you the very best. And also, please stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Eziafa Kakumokolo. I love that name. That's why I'm really taking time. Let me represent my Igbo people. All right. Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for coming. Okay. I guess that's where we end the morning brief for today. It's been amazing, fantastic. Please stay safe, and whatever you do, make people around you happy. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu.
Wish you the very best for the rest of the day and the week. Sunrise Daily is up next. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
One question before we go. What are you living for? Find an answer to that and have a fantastic day ahead. I'm Kayode Kikiolu. Goodbye.